Well, thank you so much for setting this meeting up. I'm very excited that we have a sizable group. It's wonderful to welcome you to this afternoon session focusing on collaboration for the sake of English learners, multilingual learners. And I added the date there because I will be repeating this session a couple of times for other interested colleagues. So I wanted to make sure that I have the correct date based on the recording and based on all the materials that I will be sharing with you. So let's get started. In case you were wondering about the accent and you have never been in any of my workshops, you could make a guess. I'll give you another hint. Look at the map. So you have some visual input, some auditory input, some prior knowledge activated. So we're jumping right into it. Anybody would like to make a guess, put it in the chat box. I was raised, educated, and became a teacher in the country that I'm showing you right now, and the accent that you're hearing. I'm not seeing any guesses coming in, so I'm going to give you one more hint. When I get tired, and you know how it is with accents, with language acquisition, when I get tired, I start sounding like Jaja Gabor. All right, still not too many guesses coming in. Well, I am going to get, oh yes, Brian got it, just as I was showing. So I was born, raised, and educated in Hungary, and I like to show these beautiful images just as a 5-second commercial if you have never been to that part of the world. And I wanted to take you very briefly, virtually, to the university where I earned my dual degree, a 5-year teacher education degree in English language and literature and Hungarian language and literature. So they really piled a lot on us. But also, this is a very important milestone in my career because that's where I first was exposed to collaboration and co-teaching. What you see on the right-hand side is the same high school where I was a student, and then years later, I was a student teacher. And my very first student teaching experience had to be in collaboration with a classmate, with a college classmate. Her name is Maria Oldal. She's not the same Maria with whom I publish and write a lot, but she gave me that very first experience of planning together, standing in front of a group of high school kids who were merely a few years younger than us. So it was a very, very scary experience. And we taught a lesson together. My entire student teaching was not co-taught, but my most formative experience of ever standing in front of a group of youngsters, a group of students, was by the side of a colleague. So also know that I come from a collectivistic culture. Is there anybody else here from a region of the world originally, or maybe your family coming from a part of the world where rather than the individualistic culture that we're so used to in the Western world and in the United States, in much of the world, we focus more on collectivism, on helping each other, on sharing. Let's see if anybody, yes, Katrina in Poland. So you might have had the same experience growing up or visiting family there, that that's just the norm. So please know that I fully understand that what's happening in the United States, in many countries, oh, Mexico too. Yes, thank you, Norma, for sharing that. So what's happening in our educational system, shifting from more of an individualistic approach to teaching, my classroom, my kids, my curriculum. Oh, you cannot see my screen. Oh my goodness, that is not good. Can you see it now? I am so sorry. I don't know what's happening. Everybody else could see it? Was it blocked so far? Is it the first time?
No, we can see it, Dr. Honigsfeld. Maybe at
Okay.
the top of your Zoom screen, there might be 2 tabs for the presentation view and just the people view.
I can see, I'm checking on that right now, and it's showing me that my entire screen is visible to you. But then again, there could be something happening. So that's why I quickly interrupted myself. It's on the university slide. Yes, yes. Just wanted to double check that everybody has seen everything so far. I haven't shown much. I was just showing a couple of quick slides so far. My first one was my Gmail. I forgot to tell you that I always answer everybody's email if you want to reach out to me. just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page. I got an error message from somebody that they cannot see anything. So thank you for confirming that that could have been just an individual glitch. Andy, we're okay on your end? And
Yes, we're all good.
okay, all good. So back to my story, this very formative story, very formative experience back in my early years as an educator. I became a teacher in the same middle school. I ended up going down a little bit, a couple of grades. I became a teacher in the same middle school where I was previously a student a few years back. And now I experienced the kind of collaboration that was the norm. In the United States, it's not that much the norm yet, but we're definitely heading in that direction, that the job is too big, too important, sometimes too challenging for one teacher to try to figure it out all on his or her own. So collaboration, the PLC movement, or many other ways that we come together as educators is becoming more and more accepted, or a pathway to success, especially for our multilingual learners. So here's my second formative life-changing experience. As you could see, all of a sudden, I find myself in the New York City public school system, and I'm not with high school kids. No, I'm not, because the only job that was available at that time was in a kindergarten through third grade position in this beautiful pre-war building. You could see that in Queens, New York, on the border of Bushwick and Queens, actually on the border of Brooklyn, in the Bushwick area. So all of a sudden, I became a kindergarten through third grade teacher. And I took the job because that's the immigrant experience. You're going to take the first job that's available. And the main reason I wanted to tell you the story of going into elementary teaching is because I had a visionary principal. That's why I gave you the date many, many hairstyles ago, many years ago. That was the height of the inclusion movement in New York City. And my visionary principal, Carol Wertheimer, said, why don't we try what special ed is doing? Why are you pulling the kids? Why are you spending so much time in the hallway? And I was very young and inexperienced, and I was just doing what I'm told. So I didn't know any other way. I was trained to be a pull-out or standalone teacher. So she said, well, let's give it a try. Let's pilot an initiative in which I would be going into the classroom and work with a classroom teacher, and we would figure out how we're going to co-teach. So I was very excited because this experience was already partially part of my training. It was not something alien to me. And as you could see, my colleague is a little hesitant. Her face is like, okay, we're going to do it. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. I have the big smile on. But anyway, that was really wonderful and very, very positive. And they ended up creating a training manual and a training video based on our work. So moving forward, the past 24 years, I've been at Molloy University. And if you have never heard of us, that's quite all right. It's the best kept secret of Long Island, New York. And I do a lot of collaboration with my colleagues, Maria Dove, my co-author of over a dozen books, and others are also there at the same institution. And here she is. A huge shout out to her, because it's very hard to do collaboration if you don't have a collaborator. So I'm very, very fortunate to have found my partner and my co-author, co-presenter, and collaborator, all around amazing educator in Dr. Maria Dove. So we have published together over 15 books, maybe 16. 10 of them are national bestsellers. And I have also published with other people because she knows it's a dynamic, open relationship. So I can collaborate with others. And sometimes I work alone as well. So these are just some of my 31 books that I have published since I came to the United States and I started writing books. Today, we're going to be focusing on collaborating for English learners, a foundational guide to integrated practices. And this is the second edition, the revised edition of the original book that we first published. Could you please put a yes in the chat box if you have already received it? Because everybody is going to get a copy of this book. Yes. Okay. Rebecca says yes, not yet. So I was told that it could be a mixed response that I'm going to get, that the books might not have gotten to everybody. That's all right. It looks like this. And you are going to get it either, maybe Andy, you could share how the participants are going to get a copy. I'm not sure how they're going to be delivered or mailed, or what's the plan.
Yeah, great question. I know we've ordered some. I don't think they've arrived yet, but we're going to send out updates throughout the summer too, because there's also going to be an opportunity for high school teachers, because co-teaching will be new to high school, for them to collaborate. So we will be sending out updates in the summer. So if you are interested in getting the book, which we encourage you to read, keep checking your email over the summer. We'll send that information out to you.
Great, great. Thank you so much. That's what I heard last from Toshiko, that the books were arrived. I mean, were ordered, but might not have arrived. All right, so that was my introduction. Now I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves in the chat box using 2 Ps. What is your position, and what is something that you're passionate about? Most of you show up with your full names. That's what Zoom does. So if you have your name already visible to me, you don't have to retype your name, but just your position and your passion. And if I were to fill this out, this little response, I would say I'm a professor. I'm also an author, consultant, and I'm very, very passionate about, let me just give you a personal thing, Audible books. I constantly listen. I can't sit in my car and not immediately turn on a novel, something that I constantly have to listen to. So audiobooks are my passion. All right, so thank you so much for starting to respond. We have elementary, high school, a great mix of positions. Administration, thank you so much, Andy, for being here and supporting this session. And your passions also vary from food to arts to journaling, reading, tango. There you go, Katrina. All right. Gardening, judging, boxing. Oh my gosh, take a look at that. This is very intentional. Just literally take a moment to scroll up and down. This is a big part of, you might think, where are the strategies? Give me the strategies. Well, this is actually a really important part of the strategies that I want to present to you. And that's relationship building. Being able to open up to each other. You don't have to share what you're not comfortable with, but as humans, we need to connect with each other. It's in our DNA that we can't really live in isolation. We need to build bridges and build connections and find commonalities. And just by this quick prompt, take a look at the many, many very interesting passions that appeared on that chat box. So taking the time to get to know each other as collaborators or colleagues, whether you're going to co-teach or not, just the colleagues that you work with, just being able to share something that's really important to you and then remembering that about somebody. That's really, really powerful as well. I have one colleague, I co-present with her from time to time. I don't know how she does it, but she remembers everybody's children's, everybody's pets' names and birthdays, and you name it. She just holds it in her, either in her calendar or in her brain. But I'm just in awe of how she never forgets. I don't have that kind of a skill, but we all have something unique about how we could reach out to each other, how we can connect with each other. And this short little introductory activity that I just did with you, so that we could share a little bit about what matters to you personally. Because after all, yes, it is going to be a professional relationship. It's going to be a partnership that you're forging with your colleagues, whether you co-plan or co-teach or you're on the same team in one way or another. But ultimately, we truly care about each other and about our own passions. So this is something to keep in mind. All right, so thank you so much for participating. So here are my very ambitious goals for our session. So we're going to spend 2.5 hours together today. I'm going to give you a stretch break at a natural point about halfway through. I couldn't really time it exactly and tell you that we're going to be getting up at a certain point, but if you do need your own stretch break, by all means, I live in the real world. I have my cup of tea here. I told my children to be quiet while I'm recording with you. So I know that we have to take care of ourselves and our families and other business as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an introductory overview of teacher collaboration, especially in the context of co-teaching for the sake of multilingual learners. And because that's something that the district is deeply committed to and has a track record of success with, and you will continue to work with me, hopefully, in future virtual and face-to-face events as well, it's something that we're going to start establishing a common language for. So what are the basics of an effective collaborative co-teaching model and how to build strong partnerships with co-teachers for successful implementation? So I'm going to ask you to do a quick self-assessment. I'm sure you know this. We're going to do a virtual version of this. Fist to 5 stands for a hand signal, but we're going to do it virtually in the chat box. So please add the number that corresponds to how you feel about collaboration and co-teaching. So number 5 is, you got this, you can teach it to others. Number 4, you can do it, you're very comfortable. Number 3, you're on the right track. Number 2 is, I'm not so confident, but I'm here for this workshop. And number 1, just recognizing that this might be an early stage for you of exploring this topic. And FIST really stands for 0, but let's just skip that part. I'm just looking for the 1 to 4 designation. And I am so excited that there are so many 3s and 4s and some 2s and 5s as well. So it seems like we're going to have to do level 2 foundational session here today, which I'm excited to see. Lots of 5s as well now popping up, and 4s and 5s. So great, wonderful. And I'm especially very happy to see that positive language connected to level 4, that I can do this. We might still have to continue to polish our practice. You might get a new partner, and then it feels like you're back to square one and you have to build a new partnership. But that positive affirmative approach to this, that we can do this, and this will be best for the students when we work together in collaboration. So great. Thank you so much for participating. So then, based on your responses from 2 to 5, we didn't have any 1s, which is great. What is one question that you have about collaboration for the sake of multilingual learners? I'm going to put you into breakout rooms because it's more likely that you're going to talk to a few people rather than if you have, 28 people or 20 some people looking at you. So I'm going to put you into smaller groups, 6 breakout rooms, 4 or 5 participants in each room. And just simply, we're not recording that, by the way, we're pausing the recording for that. Simply talk to each other. You signed up. You showed up here this afternoon. We always bring a question with us. So please note that using a Harvard educational publication called Make One Change, make just one change to your teaching, I'm not asking, do you have any questions? Instead, I'm asking, what questions do you have about collaboration for the sake of this population? So the assumption is that we always are eager to learn. We always want to learn as curious beings, as human beings. So what is your one question, or maybe more than one, that you have? Please share that with your colleagues. In a moment, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. We're going to have 4 + 1 minute. So in other words, you have that extra minute where you can come back and join me here, or you could still finish that last thought. So I'm ready with our breakout rooms, and I'm going to ask one of the team members to please pause the recording. And welcome back. I'm just so impressed how you maximize this short collaboration time. Hint, hint, maybe there's a need for collaboration. Maybe it's not such a bad thing if you're staying in your breakout rooms, even after the session or after the little breakout segment is closed, all the way to the last second. So now in the chat box, please share something that dominated your conversation. It could be your question. It could be somebody else's question, something that maybe you kept circling back to. It could be just a topic. It doesn't have to be formulated as a question, but please share something based on what you heard or what you previously shared with a smaller group of colleagues. Finding the time to co-plan, not enough prep time. That is the number one concern. You are very special to me. I've been coming to Beaverton since 2016 or 15, but I can tell you that your questions are not that special. Sorry to say that. These are the exact same questions that I get over and over. The time factor is the number one concern. And then Carol said, the second most frequently cited concern is that you don't want to be a glorified aide. As an ELD specialist, as a teacher, you're highly qualified and you want to be recognized as an equal, somebody who provides high quality instruction. Okay, thank you, Rachel, for adding that, shifting the mindset. You're about 30 slides ahead of me. We're going to get to that. I'll call you out when we get to that slide. The positionality, absolutely. How to build a team, how to be a unit, because kids see that. It's like a marriage. That marriage metaphor has been around for a long time, that they see the two adults or two or more adults in the classroom as a team or not. So we have to really work very hard on creating that unified front. It's all about the kids. So it's not about you, it's not about me. How are we going to communicate to the kids that you're so lucky? In this classroom, you have two teachers. Co-planning. Oh, yes, that's a good one, Rob. And I think you got a shout out from Brian that's a really, really important topic. That's definitely, oh my gosh, there's just so many things that you need to negotiate around that. And I can already tell you, even though I have written so many books, that I have never written one fixed formula. I can't give you a 5-step plan and then all is going to be just fine, because there's no such scripted answer. It is all about the partnership building. It's all about what somebody mentioned earlier, the relationship that you're forging with your colleague. And if you happen to have multiple relationships, multiple teams that you work on, they might not look the same. So those things have to be negotiated, just like in any kind of relationship or partnership, friendship, family connection, business partnerships. You have to work those details out. Trish says the logistics. Yes. Okay. The singleton schools, dual language schools, Molly says, have a very different setup. Definitely. And how do we convince those who are resistant to co-teaching that it is beneficial? Well, one conversation at a time, one lesson plan together at a time, one successful strategy at a time, one invitation into another classroom where they can see you co-teach. So there is that resistance to change. I recognize that. And I don't have, again, one formula for you that if only you do this, then everybody's going to be on board. But hopefully I will give you lots of strategies, lots of ideas, as well as the resources that the district is providing, the books and the articles will be beneficial to that. Building trust is critical. Thank you, Rick, for highlighting that. So that's also the answer to the previous question by Christine. That is only going to work if there is a trusting relationship between the two adults. So how do you earn trust? How do you give trust? How do you show that you're trusting the colleague? So that is a much larger question than just what kind of co-teaching models are we going to use. So building relationships, starting with that human aspect of the work rather than the pedagogical aspect, is what I strongly advocate for. And it seems like you're talking about that too. You structure with support, so you need the support. It can be just assigned to teachers, go figure out, but there has to be an infrastructure and a system of support in place. So how to effectively co-plan? Okay, you are also about 35 slides ahead of me. We are definitely going to get there. I do have some guidelines, some suggestions, but again, not cookie cutter answers and not necessarily identical protocols or procedures for everybody, but you can choose the one that fits your teaching style, your context. I see here high school, dual language, elementary. It's going to be very different in kindergarten compared to a secondary social studies co-taught class. Ooh, how can you prepare for this if you don't know who your co-teacher will be? Well, Charlotte, I think one way that we're doing it right now is that you showed up for this session, you expressed your interest, and you're going to build your own capacity And then you're going to cross-pollinate. You're going to share what you have learned in a way that is going to be distilled through your own experiences. And how do I make my teaching comprehensible to emergent English learners? So that's the big question, because that's why we're here. That's why we're working together. So every lesson, every content area, every grade level that we're teaching should be accessible to our multilingual learners. So we're going to get to all of this, hopefully. If not in these 2.5 hours, I am asked to do multiple sessions for the district. So I hope that you will keep coming back to work together, and that we can also participate in a book study and reviewing some more resources that I can share. Okay, so the questions. I'm going to tell you now how this book came about. Maria Dove and I started presenting on this topic in 2007. Our very first large national presentation was in Seattle at a TESOL conference. And we started collecting questions, just like I asked you to share your questions, because it's so important that we don't randomly just put together a book, but we actually write a book that matters. And that's how it became a bestseller, I think, because people started finding information in there that resonated with their needs. So the organization of the entire book, and this is the second edition of the book already, is around questions. So today, Toshiko and the team asked me to focus mainly on the contents, knowing that you haven't read the book yet, and you might not even have it handy. Chapter 2 discusses why collaboration is needed. Chapter 3 focuses on the who. Who does teacher collaboration and co-teaching for English learners concern? Chapter 4 is on the what. What are the essential components of an integrated collaborative model of instruction? And chapter 5, how. How do teachers plan, instruct, assess, and reflect collaboratively? So there are more chapters. This is a pretty hefty book. We had to hold ourselves back to get through all the WH and H questions. So we also have a when chapter that focuses on the time factor, how to be creative or how to advocate, how to create master schedules, and so forth. Chapter 7 is on the where. How can we use both physical and virtual spaces to collaborate, and how to set up a classroom in a way that co-teaching could be manageable. We ran out of question words, so chapter 8 focuses on what next, how to evaluate and review our own work with multilingual learners. So it's not assessing students, it is assessing and evaluating our effectiveness as collaborators. And chapter 9 consists of 7 large case studies, and those were written by the people who were showcased in this case. Portraits of collaboration is just the overarching theme for that chapter. So we totally ran out of question words. So as you could see, there's a lot to unpack here. And I'm, again, very honored and excited that you're going to get a copy of the book you could go through. And let me just give you immediately permission to skip over the chapters that you feel very comfortable with. Some of you had 3s, 4s, and 5s in your self-evaluation. And go to the chapter that you think will really speak to you. And read the chapters in any order. We just wanted to organize it in this way because chapter 2 is the most important chapter to persuade people. If you feel that you have to bring people on board, you might go to chapter 2. If you feel that you need to jump to the nitty-gritty of how to do this, then chapter 5 will be your starting point. If that time concern and creating that master schedule that you could advocate for, or maximizing available time that you have, is your big question, then you could go to chapter 6. So now you see why we needed to have those questions that you generated early on, because that's exactly how this book was written. And I sincerely hope that you're going to find answers to your questions. But let's continue with what we're going to do here together today. Since it's a workshop about collaboration, you are going to be collaborating. You already did that. You were already in your breakout rooms, and you're going to go back and do that again later. But I also like to use technology because we can collaborate in person, but more often than not, especially since COVID, we have learned to collaborate by using technology. So these are just 5 of my technology tools that I am planning to integrate today: Answer Garden, Mentimeter, Google companion website to the book, and some video case studies. So in the chat box, please write any of these 5 that you're not familiar with, something that looks new to you. What is something that you might not have come across before? Okay, so all right, so Mentimeter and Answer Garden, those are crowd polling, visual polling tools, and I'm going to use both of them at different points. Okay, very good. Yes, so you're just going to see they are very easy to use. From the user perspective, Answer Garden is completely free. It takes about literally 20 seconds to design a question. On Answer Garden, Mentimeter is subscription-based, but you could still use it for free. So when we get to them, I will demonstrate them or share with you how to use them. So first things first, the very first thing is always about the students. So whatever you think about, if there is a colleague who might be resistant to co-teaching, one entry point that I like to utilize in my work with educators is that it's not about me. It's not about me coming into your classroom. It's about us working together so the students could succeed. We need the kids to graduate. We need them to become successful members of society. We need to tap into their talents. So it's always about the kids. Here is my Answer Garden. So what do the students need to be successful? This is how you can participate in Answer Garden. You can scan that QR code that I shared on the screen, or in the chat box, I'm posting the direct link if that's easier for you. So please click on that link and simply give one-word answers. If you have more than one answer, that's okay, but keep entering your answer. Hit enter, type it in, hit enter, and then add the second word, and then add the third word, and so forth. So I see that you started participating, so I'm going to switch over to showing you what you're doing. These are your results. I have to keep refreshing it. So this is the free version. It doesn't automatically refresh. Mentimeter does. So it's beautiful. Look at what's happening here. Can somebody explain in the chat box what you're looking at? Let's practice our visual thinking skills and visual literacy skills. I absolutely love what's emerging on the screen. It's a word cloud. Yes, it's a word cloud, and you're contributing to it. So if you participated in the Answer Garden activity, then your word is up there. So everybody's contributions are captured. Your thoughts, your experiences count. That's what I like about Answer Garden. By the way, you could use it. I've seen it in secondary co-taught classes, beautifully utilized. There is a tab that you could click on to stop any unwanted vocabulary words to pop into your Answer Garden. And you know what I'm talking about if you work with secondary students. I trusted you, so I did not put that filter on for you. The second thing that you're seeing, any other interpretations? What else are we looking at? So we're looking at a word cloud, but what we're looking at is something very special as well. How would you capture that? Let's see what's in the chat box. Commonalities, yes, because you seem to be in different locations on your laptops, but if you still came up with exactly the same one-word answer, now you see why I was asking for one-word answers, then your answer overlapped with the previous person's answer and your word got bigger and bigger. So it shows us similarities in thinking. The larger the word, the more people mention the same thing. So basically, it's a cross-tabulation tool. It shows that 5 of you, independent of each other, said support. And then confidence, access, those are those doubles. 2, relationships is 3. I'm going to refresh it one more time. And Jackie had an amazing observation. A lot of these things are not actually provided by teachers. So for the students to be successful, they need to have relationships, but we could be part of those relationships that they need. They need confidence. We could maybe not directly provide them, But by virtue of keeping these in mind, we could create an environment that's conducive to these types of elements of success. I'm going to refresh it one more time. All right, beautiful. And I'm going to take a screenshot so we could tweet it out later on. Okay, beautiful. So final remark about this, what I love about Answer Garden and Mentimeter is that these tools capture our collective intelligence, our collective wisdom, that we all agree that these students that we're working with need a lot. So basically, here is my strongest argument why we need to collaborate, because not one teacher can always provide every one of these dimensions or elements of success. So we need to collaborate. We need to combine our expertise, our willingness, our clinical experience, many, many years of teaching to provide all of these elements of success. So let's go back to what I put together here for you. That was Answer Garden for you. And in the book, I know that you don't have it, so we're not going to turn to that page, but throughout the book, I have lots of case studies with Maria. Some of the case studies that we wrote are authentic in a sense of how actual teachers' names are given, school districts are named, and so forth. And other times, we have composite vignettes to protect the identities or the confidentiality of the situation. So very early on in the book, you have two case studies of Eva and G, and you get to hear about these students' experiences. So even though you don't have the case studies in front of you, I'm just going to remind you that when you get the book, to look for these stories. If stories draw you in, if that's another way that you think you can persuade your colleagues to collaborate, is to appeal not so much to the intellect, to the brain, but to appeal to the heart. And storytelling achieves that, accomplishes that. So you could certainly take some stories from the book, or more powerfully, you could tell stories, especially success stories. We don't want to evoke pity or some kind of regret or resentment toward our students. Instead, we want to keep telling the affirming positive stories about our students to get our colleagues drawn into this world of supporting this population. So here are some questions. What do we know about our students already? What should we know about them? And how can we embrace an assets-based perspective rather than focusing on what the students cannot do or cannot do yet? Keep telling the success stories of what works for the students. So I'm going to put you back into your breakout rooms, the same that you already were in a moment ago. I'm going to mix you up later, but right now, just for ease, I'm going to put you back into the same rooms. You're going to have just 3 minutes plus the 1 plus 1 to quickly tell one success story, one student that comes to mind. Start thinking about who you're going to talk about and say something asset-based about them, a success story, something that was really powerful and memorable. Okay, so here we are. I'm opening up the breakout rooms. Please accept the invitation and immediately jump into the conversation to keep telling the story. Changing the narrative about these students is one way to bring colleagues on board. That is actually rewarding. It's actually an honor to work with these students. You will never see the same kind of trajectory with any other group of youngsters, except your multilingual learners. All right, so let's hear those stories. Oh, we're going to pause the recording so that you're all very comfortable. Shim back. Everybody. And please, you'd like to showcase, what were you focusing on? What element of success or what dimension of students' identities were you celebrating? And I'm emphasizing the word celebration. It takes a huge courage on behalf of their families or sometimes the students themselves to leave absolutely everything behind and starting a new life. I can certainly speak from experience, and many of us have witnessed that courage. Speaking with an accent is a huge sign of courage as well. So let's see what we can celebrate. The dramatic growth in the first year. Oh, yes, absolutely. Actually, there's an amazing 20-page long study that I can summarize for you in one rarely do that, but I can do that. So lower is faster, higher is slower. So we have to be prepared for that. That lower is faster, higher is slower. So in higher grades and in higher proficiency levels, it's not going to be the same kind of very fast, very dramatic growth. So we're not hard on ourselves or on the students. It's just the 10-year data that was compiled into these massive charts that showed not a straight trajectory, but sort of a curved line. So thank you so much for sharing that, Rob. Newcomers working hard to learn English, absolutely. Peers and teachers, the impact of peers and teachers, so important. Resilience, Jackie said, absolutely. Confidence with their language development, just to take, that step of maybe just a shared conversation, a peer interaction, how that can grow into small group participation and whole group interaction and so forth. So thank you, Katrina, for sharing about growth, positive change, discovering education as value, especially if the families are in survival mode and their primary concern is food and shelter and just have enough money. Then sometimes it's not that they don't value education, but they might not have the opportunity to pursue education. All right, Brian, thank you for sharing that you were impressed with how the newcomers reached out to the other newcomers who kept coming in throughout the year. They all could see how much they needed to help each other. That's beautiful. That shifts the culture of the school, maybe just the culture of the grade level or the context in which you work, but that is extremely powerful because many of these students do come from collectivistic cultures. I'm circling back to the very first conversation we had today. So it's almost second nature to them. So you don't have to prompt them a lot. At the same time, we can't over rely on students to be the teachers of their peers. So there's a fine balance there. And Charlotte says, else with different native languages working together in science class and the shared language being English. Beautiful. That's a really, really important point. And how you can then maximize the use of English, while you can also allow them to just write out their ideas if they are literate in their home language. Draw a diagram and label that in their home language or native language, primary language, to remember the concepts. But English will become that common language, the shared language, so they can use both. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's continue. So first of all, we haven't even talked much about collaboration, but all the prerequisites of collaboration have already been touched upon, which is we share the students. We don't operate in silos because that's less effective. When we collaborate, we actually have a better understanding. Some elements of the students' identities or experiences might reveal themselves to some teachers, whereas not for others. So we need to compare notes. We need to work together. We need to have those collaborative conversations and much more. So let's define what collaboration is. I designed some virtual workspaces for you. They don't look this fancy, but imagine that you are in an air-conditioned, beautiful, clean, sleek office. That's where we're going to collaborate. And in this virtual collaboration space that we're imagining, there are two breakout rooms. Room 1 is going to focus on defining what collaboration is in every possible way. What do you want to see happen? What has been effective already in your context? What works for you? Because many of you said you are already extensively collaborating. And room 2, well, you're going to define what collaboration is through that negative angle, what we do not want to see happen or experience, what is ineffective, what has not worked for you. So we're going to also generate a whole bunch of ideas around what should not happen. So how did I do this? I designed a Google document for you. That's going to be your virtual workspace. I'm sharing the Google link in 2 ways. You could grab that QR code, or I'm putting this into the chat box. So when you grab that link from the chat box or the QR code, this is what you should find yourself in. And there you are. I see many of you are joining. Excellent. Excellent. So just get familiar with this virtual workspace. So as you could see, I repeated the directions. So you're going to discuss I put you into rooms, only 2 rooms. So 2 larger rooms this time. Room 1, your task is what it is. Room 2, your task is what it is not. Now the conversation is more important, but please gather a few key thoughts and just add a bulleted list on your assigned slide. Okay, so here, oh yeah, somebody's already typing. You're not in your breakout rooms yet, but you could start typing if you want to type, if you want to start adding some thoughts, but I am putting you into your breakout rooms. And as before, we're pausing the recording. Zoom would not record it anyway, but we're just. And I'm going to invite you to do a virtual gallery walk. I don't know if you've done that before or not, but very, very simple. Since all of you are still in the Google document, go to this little symbol that stands for shape. And if you click on that, you get hearts and happy faces and arrows and lightning and sunshine and you name it. You have all these wonderful symbols or call outs or a plus sign or anything you want. So please annotate your colleagues' slides. So room 1, you are now invited into room 2. And room 2, you're visiting room 1. Read what your colleagues have posted in their respective breakout rooms in this virtual workspace that I promised you, and simply add annotations. So let's say if I really, oh, you got it. I don't have to model it for you. It's ready to go. Beautiful. So read each other's ideas and add some annotations. Imagine that in a physical space, we would be walking around and we would put some Post-its on the wall. In August, when I'm coming, then I will be very happy to do some of these gallery walks in person with you. So this link is right here. If anybody else needs it, I think most of you are in there, but I will repost the link in case you lost it for a moment. So that's the Google Doc link where you could go back. You could just read with me as well to see, review all the different key characteristics of collaboration. You see what we did here. It's really, really important to me to do it this way rather than you listening to me for 6 minutes, lecturing to you about what it is and what it is not. A key element of successful collaboration is exactly what you said right here. This first one, a big, big, big heart. Can I grab this star and put it right there? No, you're not allowing me to do it. Right there. Put it right there because that's what it is. It's co-generative. It's co-created. Rather than somebody telling you, it cannot be mandated, but it has to be mandated and supported. It cannot be scripted, but it has to be agreed upon. So we're working with this dichotomy of what is collaboration. And the answer is right there in the very first line. I'm going to just enlarge it so everybody could see that if you were to ask me in the past 15 years or so that I've been doing this work, researching, publishing, visiting 40 states. I was just invited to my 41st state. I'm going to go to North Dakota in November. Go figure, every part of the country, or just about every part of the country, is now embracing collaboration. But how to do it best? If you were to ask me, where did I see the most impactful collaboration? I would not give you a geographic location. I would tell you exactly what you said here, where people develop ownership of it, when it's co-created. You could look at, I'm not talking against my books or my trainings. You could get inspired, get ideas, be critical consumers of everything and anything that you see. And ultimately, you have to negotiate all that. Beautiful. And then here's the second slide, which is also very powerful, getting a lot of stellar feedback there, lots of stars and hearts and lightning striking across the page. Exactly. So we have to have those difficult, courageous, honest conversations. You can't sweep it under the rug. And you are facing something that just doesn't sit right with you. You just have to simply sit down. Let's talk it out. Let's just see what we're observing here. What are we noticing? So the formula that I like to use is as simple as it gets. And it comes from literacy education. So you all know the formula already, but now applying that to partnerships. And this is what it sounds like. I noticed and I wonder. I noticed, and then you could fill in the blank, because noticings are non-judgmental, non-evaluative. Everybody notices things. I noticed that there are 26 people here. And I wonder, wondering is again a non-judgmental, non-evaluative question. I wonder how many additional educators would benefit from a workshop like this, and if they're coming to my sessions in July and August. So these are authentic questions that I don't know the answer to. So the notice and wonder formula is just one of many very, very simple strategies that could begin a difficult conversation. And we'll talk more about that. Okay, beautiful. So let's continue going back to what I put together here for you. There we go. So yes, this was our collaborative workspace, and now we're going to continue with the why. Now, I did not make this up, and you might have already heard this over and over. To start with your why, Simon Sinek, modern-day philosopher, has a TED Talk with about 50 million hits, focusing just on that. What is your why? Why does it matter? Why does it matter to you? Why are you here today? So in the chat box, I'm not going to put you back into your breakout rooms, just in your chat box, the very first thing that comes to mind, why? You interested in collaboration? Why do you think the district is going in this direction? What is a compelling argument for collaboration? And you could put it as simply as you can in the chat box. Thank you, Sarah, for starting us off with the students. That's the strongest argument that we could always have. Is it going to benefit the students, and how? The consistency, the continuity, the stronger cohesiveness. That Molly says that too. So all these C words, collaboration gets us those other C words like continuity, community. You could keep going on and on and on. A lot of them begin with the letter C for some reason. And education, yes, Katrina, and they deserve it. They need it. They have every right to have high quality education. And Rob said it very, very powerfully, to achieve their utmost success while refreshing practices. Rick says the best reason for collaboration is to model how teamwork is a positive and effective tool of progress. Indeed, if you think about the workplace, wherever your students are going to end up, in higher education, in technical career and technical centers, they might go straight into employment from high school. So there's just lots of different career paths, but chances are that they're going to work with other people. And if we can't model that for them, well, then we're not preparing them for what comes after school. So I think that's a very, very strong argument. Thank you, Rick, for shifting the conversation in this direction. And Serena says we can balance out each other's strengths. Yep. It's also about teacher learning, that we all have our strengths and we all have areas that you put it as weaknesses. I often like to put it in a way that things that we need to learn. I'm studying, I have to just brag a little bit. Can I get bragging rights here? So I'm studying my 7th language. I'm very, very late to the game, but I'm studying now, finally, Spanish. And I'm on day 187 on Duolingo. That's not too bad, right? So I'm studying actually Duolingo Spanish, not really Spanish, but I'm getting there. So Carol says, we teach and learn best when we teach and learn together. Beautifully said. That's a great way to end this segment and look at my arguments. Why collaboration is so compelling to me. It's about student learning, just as you said it. Integrating content and language as presented by one of my colleagues, John Nordmeyer. He and I wrote an article, which we're going to look at in a moment. We integrate content and language in order for the students to have access to grade level concepts and to learn academic language skills at the same time. So the double whammy that John talks about is learning a new language and learning in a new language. And in this integrated fashion, we don't have enough time to first teach language and then to help them learn in that new language. So this is borrowed from gifted education, because our students are linguistically gifted as multilingual students. And we're going to accelerate learning for them. I don't know if you've ever heard it. Just please put a yes. I'm hoping that you're going to put a lot of yeses in the chat box. To think about multilingual learners not through the lens of deficit-oriented practices or remediation. You cannot remediate what hasn't been built yet. And to me, the best guidepost that we can get for this work is from gifted education. And gifted education originated accelerated learning. That's what our kids need. They need to make more than a year's progress in a year because they are trying to catch up to moving targets. So are there any yeses coming that you have heard of this perspective? Or maybe, yes, thank you, Jackie. I'm really, really happy that this is out there already, that I'm not the first one to emphasize why we cannot look through the lens of deficiencies and deficits, but how to accelerate learning wherever the students are. So if you accelerate, you really have to plan around the target language that would be connected to the content, not in isolation, not in silos, not through a disconnected perspective. So how do we do this? The second side of the slide is about teacher learning, and it is a two-way street. Content teachers, classroom teachers, content area experts, you are going to learn, you have to learn the language features of your academic core content. Language features on 3 dimensions: words, sentences, and discourse or text level features. Vocabulary comes very, very naturally and easy to most educators. We have to teach words, but we can't stop there. We have to continue building fluency through language chunks, language frames, sentence starters, paragraph frames. So building capacity with academic language. Let me give you an example. It's very different to unpack and deconstruct a math problem compared to analyzing a document from the 19th century in a social studies classroom. Or to write a haiku poem is very different from a science report. So we have what we call disciplinary literacy. And through collaboration, content teachers learn about those language and literacy features of their disciplines. And on the flip side, our multilingual specialists, EL specialists, we need to learn the core standards and the grade level expectations, because that's the only way we can accelerate. Otherwise, we would be keeping our kids exactly where they are linguistically and might forget about how to create that pathway of acceleration. So we have to meet them, but we also have to challenge them at a higher level, both academically and linguistically. And we also need to we need to relearn the core content curriculum so that we could support the language and literacy angles of the essential knowledge and skills in each content area. So that's my strongest argument for doing this. So this is what I have promised you earlier, that we're going to take a look at this article. So in the chat box, please tell me if you feel like you wanted to have a stretch break now or after this article, after this activity. If you feel like now you are getting saturated, you need to get up. After, all right, I'm getting some afters, great. So we could just keep going. I'm sorry, I got a lot of afters first. Sorry, Rick. So we're going to take a look at this. So here is this article. This is going to be a relatively quick, but hopefully influential, powerful activity for you. So the article is hyperlinked in the chat box. So please open that first. John Nordmeyer and I wrote this article. It's in the public domain. It's called Building Capacity for Collaboration and Through Collaboration. It's a very short article. We could just scroll down. The key ideas here: building capacity for collaboration, how to connect co-penning and co-teaching. Time is essential. You talked about it, but we redefined time, T-I-M-E, because as I mentioned to you, nobody has enough time. I still have to meet at school where people tell me, we have too much time. Don't give us any more planning time. So time is also of essence. So how can we work through the amount of time that we're given a little better? And then continuing to build capacity. And here are a couple of other ideas and lessons learned, what we both have found, and lots of references here. Okay, so this is the article. And now back to the task. What is going to be your task? Your task is going to be to work in another virtual space, and there it is. This is the Lift the Line activity, and I'm putting this link now in the chat box. So don't mean to overwhelm you, but you have an article and you have a new virtual workspace. So this is the Lift the Line activity. I designed a direction slide. So you are going to be put into 5 breakout rooms. When you get into your breakout rooms, please add your first names and then follow directions. Skim and scan the article. When we skim, we look for the main idea. When we scan, we look for supporting details. But time is very short, so don't try to read everything. You could always go back and read the article again. And you could grab it from here in case the chat box you lost the link from. Then please identify one important line. It could be a full sentence or a paragraph even, something that really speaks to you. So going back to this article, you might be just spend a couple of minutes reading, skimming, scanning, and all of a sudden you say, oh, aha, leadership support. This is what's really important to me, school leaders. So I'm just modeling it for you. Choose one line. It could be a paragraph. It could be the chunk of a sentence. It doesn't have to be more than a thought, but whatever it is. And then lift that line. That's the name of the activity. Lift the line and drop it into your appropriate slide. Okay, so the directions will be there in case you need to go back. The most important thing, of course, is the conversation that takes place. And this will be our last activity before we break. So I just hope that you could share your full attention with me to do this activity in 5 groups. So I'm setting up the 5 groups, and you will have the, maybe I'm going to give you a little extra time. So it will be the 5 + 1 minute. And hopefully it will be enough time. That's a total of 6 minutes for you to skim and scan and lift the line and even discuss. Hopefully. Open, freeze. So thank you. Oh, we forgot to record that part. So I so appreciated the many comments and quotes or lines that you lifted, your little analysis here that you all focused on time and structure. And I hope that you also found the activity, the lift the line activity, skimming and scanning. And you could certainly go back and read the article a little bit more closely after the workshop is over. But now it's time for us to go on a much deserved stretch break. So Andy, you wanted to just mention a few things before we leave on a 10-minute break and then come back for the final portion of the session.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Honigsfeld, and thanks everyone for giving us your attention. I have a few quick important announcements before your 10-minute break. The first is that Dr. Honigsfeld will be doing repeat sessions of this in July and August. The second announcement is because sometimes in the afternoon, some people might need to leave. We wanted to announce it now. Please be sure you provide feedback about this session in Kickup. Third announcement is I put in the chat, if you're interested in getting the Collaborating for English Learners book, Dr. Honigsfeld book, I put a link in the chat, which is a short form you can fill out, and you can either pick it up at the MLD this summer or we will mail it to you, but please complete that form. And then the last announcement is I just put a second link survey into the chat for high school only, because we are implementing these new program models for high school this upcoming year. We are going to be providing some collaboration time. So if you and your co-teacher are interested in getting together and spending time together this summer to collaborate, co-plan, start that process, please fill out that form. Okay, thanks so much. And so let's start our 10-minute break. Anything else, Dr. Honigsfeld?
I'm sorry, yes, there are 2 questions here. Somebody's asking for the attendance code for that form.
Oh, good question. Maybe one of our TOSAs, one of our TOSAs will put that in the chat for y'all.
Okay. And the second question from Charlotte regarding the July and August dates. I don't have the exact dates. I have 2 days that I'm holding. The 2 days are July 22, 23 and August 1 and 2, but exact time or day, which of those 4 days will be chosen, I don't know yet. Those are just the days that I'm holding for the district.
And we'll
Okay.
send out updates through email this summer. And so you can, yeah, so check your email if you'd like to come back or refer this session to a co-teacher that wasn't able to make it today.
So it will be the same session. Those of you who are thinking that you would want to come back with another partner, I don't know if that is permitted, Andy, that some people can, but it is going to be an identical session, but the conversation always changes. So in a sense, it's not a cookie cutter identical session, but it's the same content that I will be delivering. Okay, so it's 5:34. Oh, no, that's my time. Your time is 2:34, right? All right, so welcome back. I'm going to share a one-pager or again, some visual input with you coming to us from special education, from Marilyn Friend and Lynn Cook. I often like to say that special education has provided the power and precedence for collaboration, for integrated services, because inclusion has been around decades before we started discovering that we could do something similar. So in the chat box, please drop a yes if you had experience with collaboration, co-teaching, inclusion from the special education world prior to it becoming so important in ELL. Oh, yes, let's see. So Serena said yes. Anybody else who was maybe a co-teacher, maybe you were the special educator, maybe you were the classroom teacher and you were collaborating with the special ed team. All right. So what is very similar is that we need an overarching structure of collaboration. Of course, the trajectories of our multilingual learners will be very different from students with disabilities, with IEPs or 504s, because we never perceive language as a disability, unless the child is, of course, dually identified and has maybe twice exceptionality or multiple complex learning needs. But typically, our multilingual learners develop, as I mentioned, I don't like to use the word normally, they develop typically, both academically and linguistically. So take a look at this. And in the chat box, please indicate, where do you start? Which component might jump off the screen for you as something that's really, really important? There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. It's your own perception. What is really critical for collaboration to be successful? Just where do your eyes go? All right, you could be laser focused as Robbie is on just planning one tiny little slice of life there, or a whole bigger slice. So keep them coming. As I said, there is definitely no right or wrong answer because it is your own perception, your own experience that really counts. And that's what makes it such a fluid, dynamic process to engage in. And Serena gives us something that's not even on the diagram, like you have to have the openness and the humility to engage in this. All right, all the instructional levels, the commitment piece, the personal commitment. So we're jumping personal, instructional. Some of you say the school level factor. So communication, district-wide. So I think you have identified just about all of them. So depending on who was typing into the chat box, you perceived a different level or different slice of this diagram to be the most important. Now, I did not know where to put the heart. I kind of put it with the personal communication right there. Often that's what you have the most control over. The personal commitment is something that we sometimes refer to as buy-in. We're not selling anything, so I don't use the word buy-in. The personal commitment comes from the heart. That's my own commitment personally and professionally to collaborate with others. The second dimension, that communication skill, is really, really important. Please put a yes in the chat box if you had a graduate course in that. Communication, arts, arts. I'm not seeing too many yeses coming in. If you were a business major, you would have had multiple courses. As educators, as some of you are saying yes, but we rarely have a systemic approach to how to communicate, how to collaborate with others. So it's something that we're learning on the job. The instructional level factors, that's that collaborative cycle of co-planning, co-teaching, co-assessing, and reflection that happens at the classroom level. between two or maybe sometimes more educators. The school level factors are often determined by the administrators in your school, and the district-wide context is why we're here in Beaverton, learning together about collaboration. So that's that mission and vision coming from district leadership. So I wanted to bring our conversation back to partnership building and communication. Some of you identified communication, the personal commitment aspect of it too, how to bring other people on board. So a quick yes or no in the chat box if you have heard of the 3 Ps of partnership building, or if you have heard of the Center for Adaptive Schools. A publication that I have here for you as a reference is Unlocking Group Potential to Improve Schools. I'm going to be summarizing the entire book in a couple of slides for you. I give shout out to other people's books as well, as you could see. So let me tell you about the 3 Ps. I see a lot of no's are coming in here. So the 3 Ps also come to us from family therapy and group dynamic building and many, many other sources. So the point here is, as you could see right away, is that if you pause, that means you are listening more actively. If you paraphrase, you're staying with your partner's thoughts and you're giving it back to them in your own words. I think I heard you say, I wonder if I heard you correctly, and then you repeat what they said. And if you pose questions, that also indicates that you want to understand what they said even deeper, getting to the core of their message more precisely. So these 3 Ps are very, very powerful. And I'm going to show you a video just to illustrate the power of the 3 Ps. But these 2 teachers were not trained in the 3 Ps, or actually it's a 7P framework. They were educators that actually drove Maria and me to the airport in Buffalo, New York, a few years ago. And we had a lot of time on our hands. So we sat in a Chinese restaurant. One of their families owned the restaurant. One of the children's families owned the restaurant, and they were frequenting that establishment. And they took us there as a little bit of a treat. So they said something brilliant in the middle of lunch, and we stopped them and we said, let's record this because it's so important what you're trying to say here. It's a 2-minute video. It's as authentic as it gets. Yes, we asked them to repeat it, but they're still saying the same thing that they just said, naturally flowing as we were having a simple conversation over meal. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, I already showed you the 3 Ps, pause, paraphrase, and posing questions. Rebecca and Lisa, the 2 ladies here, had a whole bunch of other Ps, elements of partnership building, beginning with the letter P. So I'm going to ask you to listen to the video, either sit back and just enjoy this authentic conversation, or jot down a few additional words, phrases that begin with the letter P. You could already put them in the chat box too, if that's easier. All right, so I'm going to have to go to this link. Okay, and get the sound going and the screen sharing going. So here they are. And now adjusting the sound. I want to make sure that you can hear it. There we go. Yeah. One more time, I want to check that you can see the entire screen. I'm going to stop my video streaming so that the streaming is better. So I'm still here. You can't see me, but you can hear me. And if you wanted to turn off your videos just for this short little clip, that's okay. So we could all get good reception with the video. Here we go.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we encountered when we first started to co-teach was our personalities. I tend to take over and be very global, and here's how we're going to do it, because I see the whole picture. And Lisa is very detailed, and so many times I think I would not fulfill the detail-oriented that you are, and then so you would come in and interrupt me, and then I would get like all flustered and I would get really upset, and then you sometimes would get upset with me if I didn't acknowledge some of your ideas, and so having those tough conversations helped us grow.
Yeah, and I think it really came out of the intense moments that we had, that we actually became better in our practice together, and how we used language with each other. Not accusatory, trying to, always acknowledge and paraphrase. I think the paraphrase was a huge part of our ability to actually start communicating so that we build understanding together. And so I think one particular instance where we had a moment together where I was livid, and it came out one day in the office when we were trying to plan together, and you just kept pushing your ideas and shooting me down, and it wasn't until we had that moment that we were actually able to grow, and the planning works better, and I definitely see our teaching is better and more cohesive, and I know what your next step is.
Yeah. And I think too, it was presuming positive intentions, and when Lisa was talking to me and telling me, you're doing this, and you know, this is how it's making me feel, not get defensive and just, accept that. Yeah, she's feeling this way, and I have that tendency. And so being more cognizant of that and just giving her the room to, you know, spend the time that she needs to be so detailed and respect that. So respect each other's differences. That makes us such a strong team, or the team that we are.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest.
All right, so let's see all the other P's that you have added to this framework. And I'm going to go back to my slide deck here. So your P's are positive intentions, planning, personalities, power, perspective taking, patience, and personality. So interestingly, many of the things that Lisa and Rebecca talked about without having ever been exposed to this entire framework. So I told you that I'm going to be summarizing a book for you on a single page. So in fact, the evidence-based research-informed norms of collaboration consist of the 7 Ps. Now, how they are enacted, how they are implemented, there's a lot of fluidity and co-generative processes here. It doesn't have to be a cookie cutter way of doing these things, but this is what they found from the Center of Adaptive Schools, that when an entire school improved together because they shifted their culture to be more collaborative, educators were practicing these 7 Ps. And then Lisa and Rebecca intuitively, in the hard way, in their own hard way, discovered many of the same Ps. So this is what they talked about. You shared that in the chat box. And these are the 7 Ps of the framework. So I don't know if I'm showing it correctly. Is it showing for you correctly? Because Zoom is tricking me now. Just please say yes, that you're seeing 7 Ps. Pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions. Good. Those we already talked about. But then the additional dimensions of putting ideas on the table, so sharing that personal perspective, providing data or evidence of student learning, not just pulling it out of our back pockets, but having some kind of concrete and measurable or detectable ways of documenting our thoughts. Paying attention to self and others. I think Lisa and Rebecca really discovered how important it is, because we are emotional beings. Affect is an important part of who we are as educators. We can't dismiss the emotional lives of ourselves or us as educators. So paying attention, not just on the intent, but impact that we have on each other. And that's also from equity and diversity training. So what is the intent when I say something to you? Might be interpreted one way, but what is my impact on you is really, really important to consider. And then finally, they literally articulated exactly the same thing, which is presuming positive intentions. So this is what I recommend, that if you wanted some kind of guideposts, again, I told you it's not a 5-point or 7-point program, but considering how critical it is to overcome that urge to engage in monologues. Raise your hand virtually or physically. I'm raising my hand. If you have ever rehearsed in your head what you're going to say while the other person was still talking. I'm guilty of that. All right, some of you are raising your hands virtually or physically. So, yep. So this is something that you can practice all summer long on your significant others, or anybody that you live with, or your family members, your teenage children, your in-laws, because it's really important for us to shift the patterns, another P for you, patterns of interactions because they will determine the level of collaboration that we can build. We're not in competition with each other as educators. We need to forge partnerships, and those partnerships will only happen if we're intentional around how we communicate with each other. You remember here was this diagram, the communication skills, wedged right in between my personal commitment. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a collaborator. I'm going to be a co-teacher. And then here we are focusing on our planning. We're going to get to that in a minute. Our co-teaching models. We're going to look at student work together, and we're going to reflect on our practice regularly. But how do we communicate with each other is really, really important. So after all this, I have, of course, an important question. I presented a lot of things to you, but what do you think you will need to be successful with collaboration? I'm going to give you a link in the chat box. There is also a QR code already available to you that you could participate, or you could simply go to menti.com and insert that code 46286089. I placed a lot of emphasis on partnership building. You mentioned earlier, time is an important factor. So let's continue unpacking. What else do we need to be successful? And if you're in an administrative position, what kind of conditions do you want to create for the educators that you work with so they could be successful? So whatever perspective you have or whatever experience you have, just please share what is needed for collaboration to be successful. And you're going to have a choice of 3 words to add and then submit. And you can submit multiple responses. If you need more than 3 things to be successful, by all means, keep adding as many answers as you want to. And I'm most excited to share with you your results as they are coming in. Now, this is the fancy version of Answer Garden. As you could see, it's responsive to each individual answer coming in. It immediately shifts the priorities that you are creating among these factors. It also captures for me that 16 of you gave me 39 responses, 42. Keep them coming. You can participate multiple times and then glance up and take a look at our shared responses collated here. And if you haven't participated yet, you can still do that on menti.com using this code on the top, you see right there, or the previous QR code or the link that I have. All right, so it seems like most of you have participated multiple times because now we have 70 responses. Now let's analyze this in the chat box, or you could even unmute. What does this mean? What are we looking at? We're looking at, of course, the word cloud, but what is the meaning behind the word cloud? I think it slowed down for us. Now it's not changing anymore. Oh, no, more answers are coming in. There is even more. 81 responses. Beautiful. I love it. What does it mean? What does it mean to you to see this? We're still not done. We still have more responses coming in. Similar to Answer Garden, this is also a cross-tabulation tool. So thank you, Jackie, for starting us off that the biggest phrase is admin support. What does that tell you? That it's not the classroom level support that you're worried about. Thank you, Jackie, for interpreting that. If that in fact is independent of each other, so many of you made that, and that's what it does, puts it front and center. Administrative support is huge. Leadership support is huge. I have published several leadership articles, studies, and books too, because there's only so far you can go with bottom up. You also need top down support and then meet in the middle. Admin support, district level, school level. So multiple considerations have to be in place. Absolutely. There seems to be in the same place as you have to be in the same place with everybody else. Thank you, Becky, for that. Thank you, Jackie, also for pointing out that there are so many factors that are needed. So it is happening. You're being told that collaboration and co-teaching is happening, but how to do it or what direction do we need is reflected in these multiple answers that I agree with you, and every group I work with do perceive to be similar in the sense of pinpointing and identifying a multidimensional answer to this simple question. Nobody's just giving me 2 or 3 answers. I get lots of different answers, anything from those social emotional dimensions of humility, willingness, to the partnership piece. So there's a lot of things here related to attitude and a lot of factors that are outside of your control. Thank you, Katrina, for saying there are 2 things here. On the one hand, it is emotional support, exactly as I said. And on the other hand, instructional training and support, exactly. So it's the internal and the external factors. Absolutely. So I love this tool. As you know, this is totally anonymous, and you could participate as many times as you wanted. So you could have 10 answers there or fewer. But again, it captured these 25 participants' collective wisdom. What is important to us? And you're still giving me answers, so you're not done yet. And it's really important for us to have clear understanding around what is already in place, what is already done successfully related to collaboration, what internal or external structures are already in place that allow for collaboration to take place, and how to have a shared understanding. So that's how we can get to that respect, trust, empathy, relationship building, and so forth. So thank you so much. I think I have to take another screenshot of it because you changed it up and now we have almost 100 answers. This is phenomenal. You're absolutely right. There's not one right answer what we need. There are many right answers, and in combination with each other, this is what we need. You see, this is why I'm not done publishing books on this topic, because there are so many angles to it. So let's come back to what I have put together for you for the remainder of the time. So this is, in a nutshell, the entire book that you're going to get a copy of focuses on how to build this system of support, how to create a collaborative, integrated service delivery model that will have instructional and non-instructional factors. And if you take a look at the instructional factors, co-teaching is just one of 6 dimensions. And I'm not saying that there are no additional dimensions. There probably are, but this is based on Maria and my field-based research. So we start with joint planning, co-planning, collaborative planning, whether you co-teach or not. So this is something that's really important. You can co-plan without co-teaching, but you cannot co-teach without co-planning. So everybody needs collaborative planning time, curriculum mapping and alignment. I heard about the summer work opportunity. That's fabulous. You could take a look at an upcoming introductory unit of your new year and map out the content demands and the language demands, or in a more asset-based way, the content or cognitive academic learning opportunities and the linguistic or language and literacy learning opportunities embedded in the curriculum. You cannot do that if we don't co-plan. I can't just walk into your classroom and pull it out of my back pocket. We need time. This is my strongest argument for co-planning time to be well integrated into this initiative, and administrative support for that, because of the joint planning and curriculum mapping requirement of a successful integrated model. Parallel teaching in this framework happens if you do not co-teach, such as in a dual language classroom or in bilingual education. In a lot of program models, you do not co-deliver instruction, but you still forge a partnership. There are partner languages, partner teachers. So collaboration is really important, and you're aligning your instruction. That's what we mean by parallel teaching. Co-developing instructional materials is a beautiful way to see each other's assets and strengths. If a classroom teacher or a content teacher and an ELL specialist co-develop, let's say, a number of scaffolded tools, how are you going to make sure that the students have visual support, diagrams, maybe a timeline in a social studies class? So multiple entry points into complex learning. And that kind of multidimensional instructional material development is just a job-embedded learning opportunity and collaborative opportunity in itself. So again, these elements can exist in isolation, but when we put them together, the impact will be greater. Number 5 is collaborative assessment of student work, looking at student work, again, the same 2 lenses. What have the students achieved cognitively or academically? What is the evidence of their content learning? And on the right margin, if you're doing it literally as a written piece of work that's in front of you and you're looking at it together, what is the evidence of students' language and literacy development on the other margin? And then we get to co-teaching. So all of these dimensions of instructional collaboration feed into co-teaching, but you could participate in the top 5 even if you do not have a co-teaching program or a co-teaching initiative with every colleague that you work with. On the flip side, there are the non-instructional practices, exactly what we're doing today, joint professional development, when you are talking with your colleagues in those breakout rooms, working together over the summer with each other and so forth. Teacher research is not something fancy and scary. It's simply collecting data and evidence of student learning, like action research or shadowing a student. A case study approach is perfect. Preparing for joint conferences, writing report cards together. So we give a more complex picture of how the students are doing academically and linguistically, and anything else, any other extracurricular activities. So of all of these, just let's celebrate first, and please share in the chat box something that you are very proud of, that you have been engaged in that particular practice for a long time, you have a track record of success. So let's celebrate first. Let's start with that asset-based perspective. Bragging rights. Just please share what works, because that's always going to be the entry point to bring on more people. Shared assessments, love it. Yes, curriculum mapping, great. Keep them coming. Beautiful. Co-developing instructional materials. So let's not underestimate the importance of small incremental changes. It doesn't have to be overnight, starting in August or September, all of these pieces to be in place. But whatever is already in place, how can you amplify the impact of that? How can you do not just more quantitatively, but also bring more people on, that you could go deeper into engaging in those collaborative practices? Love it. Serena says recommending scaffolds and sheltering methods. Exactly. So that's part of joint planning. You're looking at the grade appropriate curriculum, and you are now guiding or co-creating possible entry points or learning opportunities for your students. Making content comprehensible. Absolutely. It's all about access. It's not so much about differentiating instruction, but it's about how do we make sure that whatever we teach, there's going to be an entry point, a multidimensional entry point for our students. Getting back to this notion of the other concern you had at the very beginning of the session, I anticipated that, is that we don't want to feel that one educator is a highly paid aide or an instructional assistant. So creating parity and equity between and among educators is critical. So let's show it and demonstrate it to our students. So here is a cute little example that a teacher that I worked with in Indiana proudly shared with me, that look at this, the kids wrote both teachers' names on top of this quiz. So the students see that. The students were not instructed that they have to write both teachers' names, but they saw and internalized that they have 2 teachers in the room. So they wrote both teachers' names there. Here are some secondary examples from a middle school on the left-hand side. Outside the shared classroom space, which is actually regularly shared about 4 out of the 5-6 periods of the day by an ELA teacher, a special educator, and an ELD teacher, you don't see the teacher's labels or roles identified. Instead, I absolutely love the photographs, make it very personable, the universities that they attended in the Illinois area, and those little reminders that we're humans, that we need to connect with each other. So ask me about my kids, ask me about gardening or about my trips. So it was just a beautiful snapshot that I took outside this co-taught classroom, three-way co-taught classroom, just to humanize the experience, that we care about each other, we care about each individual, and we have a story to tell. And you have a story to tell as a student, so let's spend time on that too. And then here is a repurposed blackboard. You could see the chalk writing, but I just love the pronoun use here. We expect great things. We care about you. We will never give up on you. It was just so affirming to see that in these little ways, the kids saw that there is a team. There is more than one teacher who cares about them. You see how subtle it is and how tangible and noticeable it is, how we can communicate that team approach. More examples, left-hand side, you remember Miss Woodburn and Miss Bell? Well, they have in this elementary classroom a morning meeting, and they sign that morning meeting letter for the kids to see. They sign every letter that goes home to the parents, every form, just about everywhere that they could put the classroom teacher's name, they also put the specialist name. On the right-hand side, you see again a middle school classroom, Mr. Zach, that's his last name, and Mrs. Ziblet. Mr. Zach only spends one period in that classroom, yet his name is right on the top. And again, it communicates to him and communicates to the kids that he is an integral part of this classroom. So we have to intentionally show it to the kids and the community that we are a team. Now, here's a short video clip. It comes from a training that I did a couple of years ago, where at the beginning of the year, like very soon, that's coming up for you, I invited teacher teams to set a 3-part year-long action plan for themselves. And again, this team, after they presented their thoughts, I asked permission if we could just retake it and I could film them, and they agreed. So please listen to what they have to say. And more importantly, please listen for how they structured what they are planning to do. Oh yeah, Charlotte, I'm sorry, beginning of the year. I'm already thinking of next year. I know you're just finishing up your school year, but anyway, so this example was from early fall. Yes, it's a little far out. Yes, I shouldn't rush the summer that much, but anyway, here it is.
Can we introduce each other?
Oh my gosh.
This is my lovely co-teacher, Miss Liz Orsino.
And this is Frederica Council.
Yes. We are working on efficient use of our TA
Smooth transitions between co-teachers.
and student participation and motivation within our classroom.
I think now you see why I had to record them after they have presented the 3-part formula that I gave them. And they really internalized that formula, how to plan for a successful partnership. This was their 2nd year together. And each year we used the same formula. So the formula was, first one is, what is a collaboration goal? What is a pedagogical goal? And what is an impact on student learning type of a goal? So think of that again. So as a team, what are we going to do with our strategies? Are we going to focus on, and they identified what their instructional focus is going to be, not for the whole year, but initially, and then we revisited those goals. The collaboration goal was very powerful because they realized that in the previous year, they were not very effective or efficient using the time, talent, and experience of their teaching assistant. So there was a third person, there is a third person in the room, and that person is an instructional aide. So that's that person's official title, yet that person is standing around waiting to be a helper, to hand out papers, when that person has years of experience in the classroom. So they were figuring out how to tap into that expertise. And finally, impact on student learning. And then, do parents see it? Do we communicate collaboration and co-teaching to the larger world, to the community? And I just absolutely love this little beginning of the year introductory letter that came home to the kids' parents. describing what's going on in Miss Antonucci and Mrs. Henschel's class. It doesn't say that I'm the classroom teacher, I'm the support teacher. It communicates immediately to the parents that your child is going to have two teachers. And in those classes, or in that class taught by two teachers, we do a lot of things together. So the shift in our pronoun use, moving away from the I culture to the we culture, and communicating that, even when the co-teacher is not present. I've seen a lot of examples of that the teacher who remained behind because the co-teacher had to move to another class continue to say, we have high expectations for you, or naming the teacher, Mrs. So-and-so, I expect you to do this or that when it comes to a particular task. So let's wrap up with a few key ideas around collaborative planning. What is collaborative planning? I'm going to ask you to play a game with me, and that game is called the Power Word Game. In the chat box, please type in the most powerful word in this entire definition. It has to be on the screen. So this time, don't lift a line, just lift one word and type that word in the chat box. And that's going to be your power word that gives you power, that empowers you as a collaborator. No right or wrong answer. Again, it could be a different concept for different people. What makes co-planning impactful in your situation, in your context? If you don't see the word, I gave you a little time to consider. You could add your own word that is not in the definition as well. And then take a look at the meeting chat box. What are we finding here? Lots of different answers again. It's a process. I love that. The consistency and the coordination is also highlighted multiple times. The intentionality, how we're looking at language, literacy, and content at the same time. As I mentioned earlier, that's accelerated teaching. When you closely examine what you're teaching based on your grade appropriate standards, and where are those embedded language and literacy learning opportunities. Beautiful. I see some outside ideas coming added to this definition, multiple viewpoints, definitely. All right. So knowing that we are getting to the end of our session, I'm going to jump to a screen or a slide that I really wanted to end with for us to consider co-planning. I wonder if I'm sharing. Not yet. Here we go. We're sharing. We're coming back. So to make co-planning a little bit more intentional and more structured, we're coming back to asking even more questions. That's how we started the entire session, and we're connecting back to those questions, exploring or creating a protocol through questioning. So the who, what, and how three-part approach to co-planning can be translated like this. The first question is, you're going to plan very differently for beginners, for newcomers, as opposed to students who are ready to be tested out of the program. They are those transitional students. So we need to understand the class composition. Who are the students? Where are they with their language progressions? So that we're on the same page. What kind of scaffolds and supports are needed? The second question is the what. What do we teach? What are the language and content demands of the upcoming unit? So take a look at that big picture, because language is not taught in a day or in a single lesson. You can't teach past tense in a day. So we have to look at the overarching goals in the content area and then align them with language and literacy development opportunities. So that's the what. And finally, the how. How do we ensure that students are successful? That's where our scaffolds come in place. And those scaffolds can be cross-cutting, such as the lift a line activity that I gave you earlier. So if you are a specialist who visits and supports multiple classrooms, you might have a very diverse set of strategies, but for efficiency purposes, go for your high impact scaffolding strategies. How can you support listening, speaking, reading, writing, the 4 domains? How can you support visual input and visual literacy? and what other kind of linguistic or language-based scaffolds are needed. And finally, just circling back to our article from the middle of this presentation today, the systemic support. We can't underestimate the importance of how this is not one teacher's job for one period a day, but we really have to pull together that every child is every teacher's student. So we have to continue building capacity around understanding the challenges and the joys and opportunities of working with multilingual learners. So I wanted to leave 5 minutes for questions, feedback, responses, or Andy or the team, anything else you would like to add to this. But this is what I'm going to leave you with, and hopefully you will find lots of answers to those key questions, both about collaboration, co-planning, and co-teaching in the book when you get it. All right, so I'm going to ask you, after all these questions that I posed, what questions do you have now? What are some important concerns or challenges do you want to bring to my attention that perhaps I can offer some insights into? Yes, I am going to share the slide presentation. I'm sorry, Norma, that I didn't see that at the beginning. In the spirit of collaboration, I always share everything, and all of those Google documents will be hyperlinked. So yes, you will get a copy of the slideshow. Oh, the one thing that I forgot to show you, I know there was one more slide that I really wanted to bring to your attention because I promised it, and that is the companion website of the book. So I'm going to put the link into the chat box for you. Basically what it is, you share, let me bring it to you. It is, each chapter has a few videos where Maria and I are talking about what is happening in the chapter, and also some figures and tools, tables, figures, co-planning, templates, feedback form. Especially chapter 8 has a lot of different figures available to you. How do we know that we're doing it right? How can we document our success? So this is one more tool or resource that I wanted to make available to you. Yes, is this the same presentation that you did with admin? Oh no, this is not the same. No, Rachel, it's different. But this is the same that I'm going to be repeating in July and August when we finalize those dates. So colleagues, and everybody is welcome, correct, Andy? So we welcome administrators, teams.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, any other questions that you might have for me? I think I'm going to save the slide deck as a Google slide deck so that you could just have one link rather than a big attachment to an email. I think that would be the easiest.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank
Give me
you.
the thumbs up, just a one-stop shop, and then everything will be hyperlinked within that Google slide deck. Okay, any other requests or questions? I'm so glad that you spend the afternoon with me. I will have to leave when the session is over because I need to feed my kids. So I told them that they need to wait until 6:30 here. So they've been pretty quiet, and we have a hangout here. I can't say a play date because we're past that age. So we have some a group of kids here, but they've been very quiet. So I will need to feed them when the session is over. But you can email me. I think, yes, I am available to answer questions because I gave you my email before, but let me just give it again. First initial, last name. So if you feel that you need any other resources, any question that I could not answer, I hope you'll come back for the in-person sessions I'm offering in August, and send your colleagues to the repeats of this once we have the dates advertised.
Well, thank you.